Hello.
What's up, dude?
How's it going? You look a little
Going good?
tired.
Just just waking up still.
Yeah.
It's just this last week and a half it's been a blur. Not a whole lot of sleep, lots of work, but it's been good. It's
Yeah.
been really good.
What have you been working on?
So I've had all of the band Dance Gavin Dance, aside from the singers, in the studio here at Black Box at my place.
Oh, wow.
Uh, and they've been writing songs and like as a band, like they'll jam for like a few hours every day as a band and write songs, and then they come in to the studio across the hall and we record the song, like the demos, but we're doing it for real. So we're tracking real drums right
Uh-huh.
after they're done writing them, then laying down bass and guitar as well.
Oh, wow.
So it's been me trying to play a lot of catch up with them. They're a very fast band to work with. So I've been getting there, 9 or 10 every morning, trying to catch up on all the editing and cleaning things up and start mixing things.
Yeah.
And they usually get there around 1 o'clock every day, and we've been working until like 11 at night. So
Oh, good grief.
from last Tuesday to last night, it's just been nonstop. I've had no time for myself, and it's been really good though. The material they're writing that we're capturing is incredible.
Wow. So will you work with John and Tillian eventually on it, or is this just a band thing? Or the
I'm not
music thing?
sure. They still have to write their parts. It would be great. Would be great to get them in the studio once the time comes for that, and produce them and track them through the C12. That would be awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be so cool.
Yeah.
And have you worked with either of them vocally before?
Never have. No,
Okay.
just toured and hung
Yeah.
out, but yeah, never worked in the studio.
Yeah. Well, you were pretty hands-on at one point with Lucas from Veil of Maya.
Yeah, yeah. The first record he did with Vale, I was there throughout the whole process. I think I recorded like 7 of the 10. I think, what is it, 10 songs on that record
Yeah.
on Matriarch. I think I recorded like 7 of them with him, tracking them on vocals.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, if you're just joining us, welcome to this interview with Periphery's Spencer Sotelo. Um, you've been on the channel a dozen, not a dozen, but a bunch of times. So we've done another live event, and we've got several videos. We got a whole playlist on YouTube. Um, how you learn to scream and how to care for your voice, stuff like that. And you and I started talking after I did a video about your voice, and then you reached out to me on Instagram and like, hey, yeah, you really did some things that sounded a little bit like me, and so we started talking, and then we ended up making a course together, and
We did.
that course first released in 2021.
Can you believe that it's been 2 years already, dude? It's
No,
Where has the last 2 years gone?
no, it's just, yeah, I can't believe it, and then you came back here just a couple months ago, and we did an update to the course. And I think it's interesting because we did the first course kind of in the, not in the height of COVID, but in the height of like just coming out of lockdown, right? It was finally safe to travel a little bit, and so this is kind of one of the first things you did after that was going on. But then there was this
Yeah.
whole journey of you, the band still wasn't getting together. You were starting to write, or in the process of writing for the new album. But one of the main reasons you came back out was to be like, I gotta share what I've learned, having been in a band for like 14 years, and 4 of those years basically being shut down, right?
Yeah, that's like, about a third, close to a third of my entire career as a singer in Periphery
Yeah.
was just me or the band taking a hiatus. And we spent a lot of time on the new record, man, and I spent a lot of time woodshedding and just, not just for, fans and everybody else, but for myself. I wanted to be the best singer I could and get the best possible takes and just character, everything on this new Periphery record. I really, really wanted to put in the work to make sure that it was my best performance yet from any of the Periphery records. So yeah, it was a long 4 years, man, and a lot of hard work.
Right. And you've gone through like not being able to sing, um, and you know, little not major health things, but just like these pretty big ups and downs, like I like all of us have. But for someone who thrives or really exists with having your moneymaker in your throat, that's got to be stressful too.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And it just, I think I can speak for everybody. Everybody went through a lot of stuff during quarantine, a lot of emotional things, and I think like the whole world was confused, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of hardship, and like, dude, I was going through like a divorce at the time. It's just there was a lot of shit, dude. But on the new Periphery record, I got to get a lot of that out.
Yeah.
I think the hardship made for a better product for sure.
Yeah. Well, I think it's the best album yet.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
I mean, and I mean, I don't want to say by far, but I was having a conversation with a buddy of mine who, a longtime Periphery fan, got into you around the Juggernaut days, and he's like, yeah, when P3 hit, I was like, yeah, this is probably my favorite band now. And then P4 hit, and I was like, and then P5 hit, and I was just completely sold. Like, or not sold is even the wrong word. That's what he said, but it's just like that's kind of how I feel too. There's so much. The album is so simultaneously hooky and deep at the same time. And honestly, I haven't felt a connection to the writing and the journey that I've been on from listening to that album from start to finish since, and you know, anybody watching knows that since Soundgarden Super Unknown. Like that level of like I have to listen to it regularly from start to finish because there's this just wonderful connection and journey that
That's a huge compliment. Thank you, man. That's
yeah.
incredible.
Yeah. So we you and I have talked a lot about like the music side of things, but I'd love to have you just share how much more involved you were in the creation of the music this time around. And then I want to talk about the lyrics because the lyrics anyway, we'll go there in a minute. But yeah, talk about your involvement musically.
So this was the first record that all of us were there, right? From day one, aside from Halpern, our drummer, his wife was pregnant when we first started, and he did not feel comfortable traveling during all the COVID chaos and whatnot, and just to keep his family healthy. And but I went out to Misha's studio, and when the other guitar players got there, and we all started writing together, and they said, just view yourself as kind of like the producer of what's going on.
Yeah.
Just rein in what we're gonna write a bunch of shit. We're gonna throw a ton of shit at you, and you just help us structure it with vocals in mind.
Yeah.
And it ended up working really well for song structuring and creativity. And then after realizing that worked so well, I was like, well, let's do the same thing for vocals. So when it was time to start writing vocals, I had the band come out to my spot in Vegas, and we all just, we have a fun time hanging together. It's always great.
Yeah.
And we just basically had like a couple week hang session, just writing vocals together, bouncing ideas off each other. And the guitar players would even do scratch vocals or backup vocals. It was really fun.
Yeah.
So I think part of the record feeling a bit different is just more I think it's like a more cohesive thing with us all being in one room writing it all.
Yeah, which you'd never done, which is so crazy.
Yeah.
You're like the pioneer internet band in a lot of ways.
And it's worked well, and it's great because that way you don't have to plan these sessions. So I think that's also why it took a little bit longer. We had to plan these writing sessions and when everybody's schedules were lining up, but I think the end product was better for it.
Yeah. And do you guys foresee this being a change? You know, if you guys do more albums, um, will you pursue the sort of model you used on
Oh,
P5?
100%. It was just also more enjoyable for all of us.
Yeah.
It was a lot less stressful. We've talked about, I mean, obviously this is probably a couple years down the road, but we've talked about for the next one renting out a house somewhere that's not anywhere near where any of us live,
Yeah.
getting completely out of our comfort zone, living with each other for a couple months and tackling it head on that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's back to the 70s right there. you know.
I think that's why a lot of that music felt so organic, and why people were just able to get out so many ideas back then. Because I mean, yeah, you live with the band that you're writing with for a while.
Distractions are gone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
But that wasn't the case with the lyrics. Like you guys weren't sitting around this time watching all together with them watching you write lyrics.
No,
And
no,
these, there's some definite like throwbacks to other albums and themes and stuff like that. But uh I've actually never really talked to you much about your lyrical inspirations. And I think that's something that I've been getting into. I've never been really one to listen to lyrics. I just yeah, it's the melody and the shapes of words and that's
totally.
that. But as I've actually been working on trying to sing Wax Wings from start to finish, which is I'm having mixed results with. Um, but I'll get there. So I've been pouring into more of the lyrics on this album than I have in any of the other albums. And yeah, I'd love to just hear you talk about the themes that float around in your head that obviously are exaggerated and hyperbolized quite a bit in the lyrics you write. But yeah, shoot.
This record was very different lyrically for me because on most of the other records, Juggernaut excluded, Juggernaut's its own thing. It's a concept record in a totally fictional universe.
Right.
But there's always a few songs in each record that where it's like, okay, I'm writing about something personal that's happening or something from my life or whatever.
Yeah.
And then the other songs would just be a mishmash of like cool themes or something that's a current event in the world or something that I just think is cool to write about.
Yeah.
And with this record, I dug a lot deeper just because of the last 4 years of my life. I was like, okay, I want this to be a timestamp in the history of those 4 years of my life and write about everything that was happening, all these emotions I was feeling, and get as personal as I can with it. For myself, I found that writing about certain things that are going on in my life in a negative way, when I write about it,
Yeah.
it's like letting it go. It's like therapy for me. Like for example, the song I wrote about my sister, It's
Right.
Only Smiles.
Right.
She passed away a few years ago, and I was like, it was always tough for me to get over it and let it go. And once I wrote that song and it was recorded on record and we were playing it live, it was just like that weight had been lifted off my shoulders, and that was
Yeah.
like kind of how I got through it.
Yeah, you don't have to bear it anymore by yourself. It's almost like you're in a weird way like your fans can help you through it because you've released that. The people who are listening to
Absolutely,
the
man.
music. That's awesome.
And it feels so good to just be honest about things like that and just let them out there instead of holding everything in.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's right now people really crave that in the world of like it's been going on for quite a while, but I think it's both at its best and at its worst right now, where you've got so much music being created, more than ever in history, right? Because everybody can do it.
Yeah. Yep.
And you've got the big budget major label stuff, which is happening less with regards to the whole picture of things, but there's an awful lot of stuff that's being written in a formulaic. Let's make sure that this fills some sort of commercial void and speaks to a certain, it's marketed music. Um,
It is. It's becoming a product more than it is art.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. And in order for art to really be truly related to, it has to come from what you said. Like there has to be a reason to create it. I got to let this out. I want support. I want to feel free of this. There has to be reasons like that in order for it to really connect with people. Otherwise, it's just this maybe very bright flash, but an extremely short flash in the pan.
I agree 100%. And yeah, so from start to finish, the record lyrically is really about the last 4 years of my life, man. Starting with Wildfire,
Yeah.
which was coincidentally the very first song that we all wrote as a band for the record.
Yeah.
Ended up being song number one, and that was when I was at my darkest, like the lowest point probably that I've ever been in my life.
Wow.
And it's all the lyrics are about that. Sometimes, like I think the first time we played it live and I was really brushing up on the lyrics, I was reading them all written down for the first time, and it gave me chills. It was like I can't
Mm-hmm.
believe I was in such a dark place. It didn't even feel like the same person to me. And then the last song on the record, Thanks Nabuo, was about the victory of me getting through those years and coming out on top, being a better person in every aspect, and just basically celebrating uh, me making it out on the other side.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Wildfire is maybe more. Well, it's very direct in terms of the plea and the hook, right? And I you're simultaneously burning like wildfire and begging for people to dig you to get you out of this hole, right? It's like this. Uh, you still feel so passionate, but you can't get yourself out of the hole by yourself. I think
Yeah.
that's a pretty profound and relatable thing, right? I feel aspects of that probably every morning.
And just to double down on what I was saying before about that being my outlet and feeling better after I write about something.
Yeah.
I remember the day perfectly, man. I was writing that on my own, and it was a tough day for me, and there were some tears shed during some of that and some of the
Mm.
tracking when I was demoing it out. But by the time I was done, my friend hit me up and was like, "Hey, I have extra Christina Aguilera tickets at the Virgin Theater. Do you want to come down and just like it's free, whatever?" And
Wow.
I ended up going and having a great time down there seeing Christina Aguilera, which is, I mean, not something I planned for that day, but I felt like a renewed person, and I was able to go out and do that and had a great night afterwards. And it was like I feel like if I wouldn't have sat down and gone through the pain of that and really just digging into that, what was going on deep down inside of me,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have been able to have a great night like that. It
Right.
was like I wasn't even feeling that way earlier in the day after I had done it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That idea of be like naming how you're feeling and being honest with yourself on how you're feeling and using your art to find a way to be honest with yourself. That's that's amazing and I think huge in a lot of ways because I know I have trouble sometimes expressing how I feel um directly, right? Like I don't feel right, but I don't necessarily know why I don't feel right. And so the only way for me to really get to the bottom of it is to sort of step outside myself and sort of watch myself from over here. And I feel like the best way to do that is to be an artist for a minute because
Yeah.
you can almost look at what your emotions are more objectively. You're not judging yourself for feeling a certain way.
Well,
Instead,
you're not so in your head as
that's
well,
right.
right? Because you're doing something. You're using it for inspiration to
Yeah.
create something like art that makes you feel good. So you're taking all these negative feelings and channeling them into something that's positive, and then being able to sit back and say, "Hey, I created this out of that. Something positive came out of it, and it feels great."
Yeah. Yeah. Do you feel that way mostly in lyric writing mode, or would you say there's a freedom in like getting and getting on mic and just, and I ask this because my answer is sometimes I'll just sing, right? Like I don't even know what I'm singing. I'll just come down here and just moan and do things that,
Dude,
and songs come out of that
ab-
sometimes, but
absolutely, man. And I think there's a science behind that. Like you think about like monks, right?
yeah.
And like home, like that feels really good to do, right? And it's a thing that they do to it's like the spiritual calmness type thing, right?
Yeah.
And I think there's something to be said for using your voice in a way and it resonates in your body, your chest, your head.
Yeah.
I think there's something going on with that and how it uplifts your mood.
I do too, right? And you're expelling air, and it's almost like exercising, but because there's this sensation of vibration, it's, I don't know, that there's this drug-like quality to it almost. When you've gotten
Well, I
done.
also I also think you're breathing a lot more oxygen a lot
Mm-hmm.
faster than you would just at a sitting pace.
Yeah.
Like think about that. Think about how much you're breathing when you're singing.
Yeah. I I wonder if that's why um when 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 someone is singing and they're trying to sound good, they're trying to achieve with their voice. They're not in a mode where their voice itself can be therapeutic for them, right? If singing is work and not a release of emotions and a release of struggle and a release of tension, it doesn't reflect freedom of expression, freedom from the things that are happening, but instead it represents part of the struggle. And I think what I've enjoyed so much about working with you in the stuff that we've done through the courses, and especially this course update that we just did, is that by going through lines of these new songs, and you throwing me in the booth and going over these and internalizing them, each one of these lines, lyrics, the what is initially a challenge becomes not even really an exercise, but an experience. Like everything that you put on me for this new course to try becomes a unique experience that, honestly, like I think that's one of the reasons I'm so attached to this album, is because I got to work through the aspects of these songs before I knew them. And so now when I'm listening to the album, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that time that I remember going through that line and singing that line, and I can go back and listen to the
You have
recordings that
like
we
a
made.
personal connection to certain parts.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah, I
cool.
really do, and I find myself having this personal connection to the lyrics because we cherry picked some of the most meaningful parts of the album for us to go through, and so it's gone well beyond for me which is what we set out to do, right? What we set out to do is like, let's have a set of exercises so that everybody can improve with their voice, based on what you struggled through the last 4 years. It's gone beyond that with me to now there's catchphrases, and there's these moments of like going back to almost a nostalgic experience. And so if I need to warm up or if I need to get my voice in shape, I got a Periphery line from P5 to sing. Or maybe that's not it. Maybe it's that I'm waking up in the morning and I need a song stuck in my head to get me energetic and set my perspective correctly. Like, that's what this album is doing for me because of that personal
That's awesome,
connection.
dude.
And
That's super cool.
I think that part of that too, and not to get too like, but I think a part of that is having having a relationship. I feel like I have a relationship directly with the music because I worked with you, the person who created the music, and that's really a special thing to think about. Like, there's no other album I can say that about.
We had so much fun doing that too, man. Like me being where you're sitting right now and you being in there and us talking through the
Right.
parts and just and that was, the first time that I had sung a lot of these songs in bigger chunks too. So it was that was a learning experience for me that helped me kind of analyze how I was going to be singing stuff for that upcoming tour.
Right.
It was a learning experience for both of us, even though it was material I'd already, written and recorded.
Right. Right. Well, another highlight for me was a couple weeks after we finished this this thing. Um, you happened to be in Denver for a show,
Oh yeah.
and there's probably footage out there somewhere. But I also had Lauren Babick, and if any of you have heard of Lauren Babick, she's amazing. She came out to
Great singer.
yeah,
Yeah.
she came out to do some things here at the studio as well, and so she happened to be here, and so I got a text from Spencer saying, "Hey, Lauren's there. Ask her if she wants to sing Marigold with me." And and I was like, "This is really surreal. I get to go down, hang with Spencer after the show, and the another person that I'm working with gets to go sing a song at the show, and then after you guys perform, you come back to the soundboard and just hang with us. Like, what other singer of a band comes out and just like hangs by the soundboard and enjoys? Like, I've never experienced that in all the shows, and I've been to a lot of shows. I've never experienced that.
Dude, that's one of my favorite parts of touring is being able to watch live music every night, right? Like playing on stage, it's fun. It's amazing. It's a high. There's nothing like it. But being able to, when your job is done, just be like, hey, I'm going to go out and have a couple hangs, a couple drinks, whatever,
Yeah.
and watch good live music. And I think there were maybe only 2 or 3 nights on that entire month-long tour to where I didn't watch Under Oath. They were just, I was just enamored by how fucking awesome they were live.
They were
And
good live.
that was me almost every night, was sitting back at the soundboard by the sound guy every night and just watching them and just in awe of how destructive they are live every night. It's so good.
Yeah. Yeah. Hold on real quick. I need to get something because I realized that I am posting the link without the bundled discount.
Oh,
So, just a second. I also was going to ask you while I'm finding that link. Talk about the relationship that you guys foster with other bands while you tour, because that was another thing. As you guys were working with or just hanging with the other bands, you seem, I've never been that close to a tour, but you guys seem to be very, very supportive and very relational. You might have your own buses, your own space, but there's a lot more friendship that seems to go on there than I would have thought.
there's a lot less ego than you'd think, man. And you got to think about it. Like, you're out on the road away from your family, your friends for a month at a time, and you're working with these people every day. You're seeing these same faces every day, sharing the stage with them. Like, it's kind of inevitable that you're going to end up hanging out with them like they're part of your family, right? You're
Right.
doing this, you're all doing the same thing for a month straight. And some bands hang out more than others. But I feel like we've gotten very, very lucky in our career. We've generally only toured with people who are awesome from the bands that we've gone out with. There's always the odd one here or there, that don't hang as much, and it's not as organic,
Right.
creating relationships with them. But a lot of the time, man, it's just people in bands are cool people. I feel like you have to be an interesting person to have that sort of lifestyle. You just talking with people like that. You end up getting some really interesting stories and great conversations, and everybody's kind of like everybody's a free spirit and always down to try new things. Like, I'm bummed we didn't get to do it, but it was like we were talking from day one with Under Oath about like, oh, let's set up a top golf day, and
Yeah.
like let's just all hit a top golf and just things like that, like let's try and do that on a day off. We ended up seeing some movies with them on tour, and they're just they're such nice human beings, man. Like the nicest people, no egos whatsoever, funny as hell.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of laughs on that tour.
Yeah. And we have a couple questions from people that have come in. We'll just maybe take a break and answer some of those. Um, and then I've got a few more I want to ask you.
Okay.
One here, how many times do you hear someone saying that your song helped them deal with some hard times too? It goes far beyond the performer and the performance, right? And we were talking that I was giving testimony there on how I've related to your music, but do you hear that often?
I do, and the first few times that ever happened to me, it was hard for me to kind of like understand it, like not expecting to hear something like that from somebody after a show or getting a message online or something. But it's really cool, like being able to impact somebody positively, indirectly, and like unintentionally. It's like when I think when anybody sits down to write music, they're not doing it with the intention of like, oh, this is going to help this person get through this. So it's like it's this extra thing that you kind of don't expect to hear. That's just awesome. It's an amazing feeling hearing that.
Yeah. Uh, Here's another one. It's not really a question, but cool. I love how instrumentally too everything plays so well together, and he references everything is fine, um, being about uh, just insecurities about the body while having being comforted by these terribly glitchy guitars, and I mean just this like you create that what people describe about what's happening in their body with the sound of the guitar and the vocals, right? This shooting pains,
It's an ugly song, that's
Yeah.
for that's for sure.
Right. It was so funny. I had that on in the car, and my kids were in the back seat, and I didn't I didn't have the music on. Like I was listening to it in my headphones, and then I hooked my thing up to the car, and the came blaring on in the one screamy part that I can't say right here on YouTube, um, and the and my son was like, what are they saying? I was like, um, I, I'll tell you later.
you, you, you'll understand when you're older.
Right, right. But it was kind of one of those things that it just took me totally by surprise. It had to be like that moment of that song that came on. Kind of funny. But okay. Let's see here. We had a cool question about vocal production, and we had one about taking care of your voice. And I will say that we talk a lot, especially in this new course update, about what you've done, what you've changed to take care of your voice, to combat vocal fatigue, which is what the question was directly related to. But talk a little bit about that here on what give us the fly overview of how you look at your voice differently than you have in the past when it comes to guarding against that.
So, one thing I've started doing when I know I have something important coming up, whether it's an important vocal recording session, a tour, something of that nature. I've always had a problem in the past, to where I wouldn't prepare enough, wouldn't not just warming up leading up to those moments in time.
Mm-hmm.
But this time around, I really, really would actually practice and beat my voice beat it back into submission so that it's ready to do its thing well ahead of time
Yeah.
of the event that I need it for. And also giving proper rest after beating it. So
Right.
like for this Under Oath tour, um, about 3 weeks before, I was practicing so much that I beat the shit out of my voice. I ended up halfway blowing it out because of how much I was practicing. But I felt like that was necessary because after taking a few days off after that, it healed back stronger, and I was able to use it in a way that I've never been able to use it live on tour because it was already so strong. It felt like I had been on tour for weeks at that point.
Yeah.
And
Right.
that's kind of a new approach I've taken. I've never done anything like that before.
Well, so what I thought was really interesting, and you shared all these new revelations with me about how you take care of your voice at sort of the end of the time that you just came out here. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but one of the first things we did was record the very first one take sing through for Wildfire. And you didn't let on at all that the previous 2 weeks you were like, I don't know, you basically couldn't hardly talk, and you were able
Yeah.
to coax your voice back and do these very almost zen-like mindful things that you share in this updated course, to get your voice. I mean, 2 weeks before you could barely talk, and now you're doing something as strenuous as, well, you were also preparing for the tour too, but
I will. Yeah.
yeah, that blew my mind that you did this thing, and you're like, yeah, it's pretty good for a first run through, and then we get to filming the later parts of the course, and you're like, yeah, 2 weeks ago I couldn't talk. I was like, what?
I was stressing that so hard, man. Like my singing voice didn't feel right until about two or 3 days before I came out to your place
Yeah.
for that. So I was stressing that really hard. But
Ugh.
yeah, I was staying positive and taking all the vocal rest and right precautions that I needed to get my voice back there.
Yeah. Uh, in the previous course, Spencer mentioned having issues with being too tense. Could you talk a bit about how that manifested and how you managed to relax more into your singing? And I will say, before you say what you say, that that is one of the main things that I hear in a difference between, don't get me wrong, P4's vocals were incredible in a lot of ways, but they were not as natural and soulful as P5. And I think a big part of that, which we also cover in the updated course, which you didn't use any tuning on any of the main lines. That's huge. And so there's
Yeah.
this more natural, like organic, relational aspect to the singing because it's so raw. But the other,
It
go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, but the other thing that I notice is that you seem to be less about trying to go places with your voice and more about following where your voice wants to go, even on the really wickedly high stuff. Like if you look at Wax Wings, right? You hit at the very end just these ridiculously high notes. I think it's a G4, which is the same as you hit. I think you hit it a couple times on P4 as well.
I think that one might be an F sharp.
Oh,
I
and that
think
was an
that
F
was
sharp.
the same one as the same note as Ragnarok.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Um, but you dance around up there on P4 too. But there's much more of a journey getting there. How you get up to those notes feels simultaneously like, I don't know, like more of a journey but less work for you. I don't know how I can.
Yeah. There was a lot of workshopping that I did, or woodshedding that I did on my own over the last few years. And one of the things I tried stressing was not focusing so much on notes themselves and this note being perfect and this and that,
Yeah.
but what's happening in between notes, the sliding around, the occasional run to get from this part to that part, and feeling like this like emotional connection to that rather than just, okay, think about the notes, and also letting your body do a lot of
Mm.
a lot of things to get your voice to do certain things, letting your body be loose.
Yeah.
I find that moving around and doing things like that, and whether it's your hands or your face, it enables you to be a lot more relaxed here because you're not standing still focusing on just
Focusing
what's
on that.
happening there.
That's right.
You're letting your body move around and flow, and just you're feeling rather than thinking, you're feeling.
Oh, that's such a good way to say it. Yeah, you're feeling rather than thinking. And the thoughts that you then have are based on what you're feeling. And
They're
so,
more emotional than they
yeah,
are like in a like thinking about a clinical sense,
got to hit
right?
that F sharp. Because if you're thinking about
Yeah.
got to hit that F sharp 5, then you're probably not going to hit it because you're going to start working against yourself. It's like if you try to keep it up, you can't keep it up, sort of thing. But if you're immersed in the experience, you you go there almost naturally because it feels right. Yeah,
Totally.
that's
Totally.
amazing. Well, so I had heard you live prior to the concert that I went to, um, and not like I heard you live this last time. Um, you had mentioned when we were out to dinner before the concert, like, yeah, I think I have this little bug. I'm still gonna bring it though. I'm still gonna kill it. And you were just totally confident that you were gonna. And I was looking at my buddies and at Lauren, whereas we were back at the soundboard and you were performing, going, I don't know if this is possible, but this right now sounds better than the album in some ways because there's this live energy but you were hitting all the notes and you were doing like tunnel screams and you were interacting with the audience and you were I mean it's one thing to have, Misha over there nailing the guitar parts because it doesn't require this physical engagement that the vocals, but you were going above and beyond with sounds and textures, and it blew me away. And I saw in practice what you just said. You are up there experiencing. You are feeling, you are not thinking.
And
And
I wasn't doing the exact same things every night on stage either. It was
no,
it was just like, what am I feeling in the moment? What am I going to have fun doing? What's going to make me enjoy being on stage here tonight? And every single night was a totally different experience. I'd borrow from this night or that night, or be like, oh, that was really cool. I'll try that again. But a lot of the stuff I'm doing, that's not exactly how it is on the record. That's just off the cuff and just feel. It's just feeling it in the moment.
yeah, and I can honestly say that is the kind of instruction that you put me through, especially in this latest instantiation of the course. Encouraging me with these lines that I did not know to just get in there, just make it your own. Stop thinking so much about about where to come in. There were several times where like I came in totally wrong every time, and you didn't
Well,
even
yeah, because I mean,
comment on that.
some of the rhythm patterns, like if you're gonna nail them exactly how they are, like they're not easy rhythms to learn, right? You have to sit down and learn them.
Yeah.
But yeah, like making something your own, and the same goes for, if you're covering something, do it your way. Don't sit and think about, okay, this has to be one to one the way that the person wrote it,
Because you
intended it to be,
never.
because it's you. Put your own personal stamp on it. Have fun with it.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm finding. As it's one thing to work through cherry picked lines that you've chosen for people to work on and make exercises out of the lines, like we've done in all the courses, right? But particularly in this latest one. But it's a whole other thing for me anyway, to be like, I'm gonna try to sing Wildfire, and I'm gonna try to do it. I'm gonna get it to where I'm happy with me singing Wildfire through in one take. And I wanted to ask you, because I haven't asked you since I've started working on it. Can you sing through? Wait, did I say Wildfire? I meant Wax Wings.
Wax Wings, I
Yeah,
have not done that yet.
you have
And
not sung it through in one take or
little
tried to.
little spoiler alert, we have a show coming up in the UK. It's called Radar Fest that we're headlining, and that will be the first time we play Wax Wings live. It's in the set list, so I've got to brush up on it and figure out how to do it.
Yeah, I'm having so much trouble. Well, not so much trouble, um, but it is challenging the way like the first part is almost the most difficult because once you get into the hookier parts of the song where you're holding things out and where the rhythm is a little bit more stable, but the rhythms at the beginning in the vocals at the pitches you're singing it's very difficult to feel.
It's really balls to the wall in terms of the range. It's up there for a long time in
Yeah.
the song in that first half.
Um, Talk a little bit about so just going to the vocal production, um, getting yourself comfortable to where you can in the studio think or not think but feel. I think live you kind of have to do that because you've got the audience and everything, and if you get, it's like you'll be burned alive and people will hate you if you're too self-conscious on stage. But in the studio, like, how do you get out of your own head in a studio environment?
I try to focus more on the writing aspect first, and when I'm doing that, not thinking about getting perfect takes, right? Not making it this like, oh, like this has to be exactly perfect when I'm writing it right now. In focusing more on having fun and enjoying the writing process, and then learning it, and then going back once I'm familiar with everything, and then viewing it a different way that time. But when I'm writing the vocals, I'm just trying to have as much fun as possible doing it. Because
Yeah.
I really do enjoy writing vocals, man. It's one of my favorite things to do in life. And when you're trying to nail perfect takes and getting too involved in that side of things when you're writing, I feel like it takes the fun out of it for me.
Well, and your approach, which I have wildly I always did similar to what you did, but your approach of step recording, essentially writing as you record, and not, it's not a pride thing, right? Like, you don't write the whole song and then try to sing the whole thing 6 times through, and
No,
here
I'll go back months after and then
and fix
really
stuff.
nail the takes. Once
Yeah.
once I've learned them, once I've had time to sit with them.
Right. Yeah, that's huge because you're almost like giving yourself your own exercises, which again is what you kind of did for me here, and what you're doing for everybody in this latest course. It's like these are things that when you initially write them that you can't do, and but you hear them in your head, and you're sort of putting it out there to, like, this isn't about what I can or can't do. I don't have to be good enough to write what I hear in my head. I'm just going to write what I hear in my head. Let things be as they are in these demos or whatever it is, and then as you sit with them and as you not even intentionally practice them, but just let them exist. I think that's another thing that I've really learned is it's not about like I gotta be, now I have these things that I've written, and now I have to practice to get there. It's like once they exist, once you've birthed them, then you nurture them simply by being present to them, not necessarily by singing them over and over and over again until you fry your voice.
Totally. I think there's something to be said for your brain hearing something enough, and I feel like that preps you physically for what you need to be doing with the vocal lines that you're not comfortable with. If you know them,
Yeah.
internalize them, there's a lot less guesswork. You know exactly what's happening, and your body knows what needs to be done.
Right.
Obviously, there is some practice involved, but I feel like it's less when you really have it internalized.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing how counterintuitive yet true it is that simply being conscious of it doesn't mean that you don't have to practice it. It just means that actually effective practice always includes that sort of constant mindfulness, right?
Yeah, listening back to what you're going to be doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally incredible.
Like when we're working on records, I'm not listening to much else music other than our demos. I will religiously just jam the fuck out of our demos
Mm-hmm.
constantly. And you know me, we talk music all the time. I love to listen to music, but
Yeah.
when we're in album mode, there's not much other music that gets listened to on my part, aside from the periphery stuff.
Do you find that the muscle memory forms as you're listening back to the demos? And
I don't 100% know, but there were certain points to where, so like, we've talked about this before. Like, I write stuff that is outside of my wheelhouse, and that
yes.
stuff that I'm not technically good at when I'm writing it, because I want to better for myself. That's how I better myself, right?
Yeah.
But when it came time to start singing these songs at practice with my band, and even the one take through pass of Wildfire, in my head I was like, okay, we'll see how it goes. But like, doing that for the first time, I was surprised. I was like, I can't believe I'm able to do this stuff, because when I was writing this, I wasn't necessarily comfortable doing certain techniques,
Yeah.
but after listening to it for a year, I felt like I was able to nail it a lot easier. Like some of those runs and like
Yeah.
the weird like mode change in the chorus and things
Right.
like that, it felt a lot more natural to me. Whereas when I was writing that, God, some of the parts of that song were just impossible to get. It took me days on certain parts.
So I think you answered the question. Yes, like what I was hoping to hear you say was I surprised myself. Like you couldn't do it, and then you came in here and you did this, and you're on tour, and you're like you're singing these things better than the album, and that came as a surprise to you, because not because you were woodshedding them and practicing over and over again, but because you were just listening to what you'd done and unconsciously forming. Your body was going, here's how I'm gonna bail you out. Here's how I'm gonna bail your brain out. Like your body went to work for you because of your attentiveness to listening.
Yeah, there were some nights on this tour where I was nailing even older songs, nailing them leaps and strides above what I was nailing them live a few years ago. And
Yeah.
I don't know what the shift was. Like, yes, I did practice, but I think maybe it was, like doing all these things that I were not in my wheelhouse on the record, listening to them so much, and I think using some of those techniques that I learned and subconsciously letting
Yeah.
that bleed into the performance of the older stuff too.
Yeah. Yeah. Quick question here for you. What was the vocal effect used to get the super gritty, choppy, distorted sound on the vocals in Wax Wings? And
In Wax Wings, which
thanks,
part of the
Newell.
song I'm having trouble remembering?
The gritty, choppy part. Oh, what?
In Wax Wings.
And then he's also saying the other one is thanks, new oboe. Is there a? I said that
Are
wrong.
there choppy vocals in those songs?
Well, I don't know. I don't know that the. I do know that in the new course we cover that really cool way that you do to like both widen and add clarity with plugins. I wonder if that's what he's talking about.
Well,
Um,
there is a plugin that I really like to use for certain crazy effects, and it Isotope makes it, and it's called Vocal Synth 2. And
oh yeah,
you can essentially turn your voice into like synth patches, and it has like ring modulators and all other sorts of really cool things. There's a lot of good presets that are jumping points, and you can really get wacky with vocal effects on that. That's probably my favorite thing when it comes to doing like, oh, this needs to sound like a wacky effect on vocals. That's usually my go-to.
yeah, yeah. That's cool. Um, Caleb asks, my voice teacher at school won't let me do any aggressive vocals because she thinks it's dangerous. What should I do? Well, I'm going to answer quickly, and then I'll let you answer. Um, and I won't take your answer, but um, it's not dangerous if done right. In fact, it is more dangerous to pursue clean singing from a clinical, uninspired workshop exercise perspective than it is to experientially learn how to do aggressive vocals. And the reason that is because so many times when you're learning to sing clean stuff, we're striving for things. I got to hit that certain note. I got to do this and that. I got to develop my best tone. And a lot of times we have these goals and we're so tense while we're doing it, and we go too long. We haven't learned to listen to our body, and when our body is telling us that enough is enough, that we go overboard. And that's when we cause strain, that's when we cause injuries. But with aggressive vocals, the reason aggressive vocals can actually be safer to learn is because if you're straining to hit a note, it takes you a fair amount of time to go hoarse or feel something weird, right? You feel tension, and then over time you're like, oh yeah, I'm a little hoarse. If you're straining or doing something that wrong in aggressive vocals, your body will scream at you. You will know if you're doing something wrong within a fraction of a second.
If it hurts, you're doing it wrong. If it doesn't hurt and you don't feel like you're wearing on it, you're fine. You're probably fine. Listen to your body.
Yeah.
And I think generally humans are afraid of things they don't know about, right?
Yes.
And these vocal coaches have been taught very clinical ways of doing things and by the books, and they know nothing about aggressive vocals and screaming, and that scares them. And their go-to answer is always going to be, don't do it. You're going to hurt yourself.
Right, because they don't know.
Listen to your body instead of those people. That's all I'll say. You'll know when you're doing things wrong and when you're doing them right, because you'll be able to feel it.
Right. And by budgeting, yeah, I mean, some of the things that we go through in the course, and I especially love the workshop that we did inside the course with Lucas Magyar, because we talk about some of these extreme techniques in detail, but both of you were saying, when you're first starting out, you got to do these things like just a few seconds or a few minutes at a time to try to get these sensations. You can't say, well, I'm going to sit here and practice screaming for an hour after I warm up, or even 10 minutes or even 20 minutes or anything like that, because you don't know how to do it yet. First, you have to be shown how to do it. Next, you have to experience in very curated, limited spurts. You have to experience little victories. And then you have to lean into those victories over time, and not over time as over 2 hours, but over weeks, months, years, in these short, manageable spurts that you have determined are appropriate for your own body. That's the biggest part about it. And what I thought you were going to say, which you can expand on, is that, man, it doesn't hurt. It's not that it doesn't hurt, but it's not damaging. I, Spencer, have been doing this for now 14 years, and I'm getting better and better each year. And
my voice has only gotten better.
Yeah.
And yeah, I feel like I'm relaxing a lot more now.
Yes,
when I'm
are.
screaming.
Mm-hmm.
My screams have gotten bigger and louder the more I've relaxed and practiced to relax. The more you push, the more you feel tense when you're doing it. That is the wrong way of doing it.
Well, so one of the first lessons in the new course is a section from Wildfire, and you posed this section because of the importance of managing air. And and it was crazy. You guys will see it if you get into the course, but he goes in and he does it, but he gives me this disclaimer. He's like, I'm just warning you, I could not even come close to doing this when I wrote it. And we're talking about like where to take breaths and how the breath management is going to totally change when you enter into your scream and stuff like that. And I was like, yeah, I know. I've been listening to it for a little while. I think I can do it. And I go in there and I do the spoken one and it's fine. And then I try to to go and add intensity, and I added way too much intensity. I was using way too much like push, not managing my air, and I didn't even get like a quarter of the way through it. And we stopped the recording. I was like, whoa, okay, I need to completely change my approach. But once I was able to relax into that, even though the words are going like this, once I was able to relax into the diction, and find that area that felt okay, but not think I had to be super aggressive. It was almost like I was letting the aggression come out rather than trying to manifest the aggression. And I think that drill right there was that we adapted from Wildfire has been a huge thing for me.
I think that's one of my favorite sections of the new course we did, was talking about budgeting air, but also using your breaths in a rhythmic way that makes sense with the parts you're taking breaths in, right?
Yeah.
Rather than letting your breath land on when you're taking it on a beat that doesn't exist, or like in between, not in time, because then it throws off your whole performance, right? Like your whole performance is no longer in rhythm or on good time, because what you're doing with your body taking a breath, that's still part of the performance, right?
That's right. Yep. Yeah, it's all part of it.
Yeah.
One thing that I found, well, when we first met, I thought it was just cool because I kind of had the same mentality, which was when you go to start singing for the day or performing, recording, or whenever we'd film anything, and right before you did the Wildfire one take, the last thing you do before doing what you do is take a shot. And
it helps me relax, man.
Yeah, that's
above
it.
all,
It helps. Well, I think it does. I think it does more than that. I think it helps you enter into experience mode. It's like, well, I'm not here to. Your experience starts by ingesting some fine bourbon. There's the beginning of the experience. Now I'm gonna go finish this experience, and I think that's just such a healthy mindset. Like, there's so much argument out there, oh, alcohol is bad for your voice. Well, sure, getting trashed before you go sing is, but
that's a totally different thing. Everything in moderation,
right,
is going to be different than if you go overboard with something.
Yeah. Yeah. But if you are helping yourself relax, you're actually being more attentive to your body. And you're actually able to listen to your body more because you know that one little, dribble of alcohol is going to help you enter into that state. And yeah, I just think that's a huge thing that any singer needs to keep in mind. I'm not saying you have to have alcohol before you play to that's just using a vice. That's totally different.
But what is everybody can have their own thing. Like, what is something that helps you relax and gets you out of your head?
Right.
Do that before a vocal session, and I guarantee it'll change. It'll change the way that you're looking at doing everything.
Absolutely. Well, talk a little bit about, without giving anything away that you can't give away. Talk about some of the projects and aspirations for the band over the next 8 or 9 months.
So yeah, like I said, we're doing Radar Fest. That's in July, but I can't say when, but it will be this year. We're planning a headliner, and we're doing it in a bit of a different way than we usually do. We're doing something we've never done before, so that'll happen this year. I can't talk about when we're doing it and who we're doing it with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, real quick. What song were you recording when the cops got called?
Everything is fine.
Perfect. That's what I would expect.
In the window, so the whole band was there, and it was like springtime here in Vegas, so it's like it wasn't super hot or anything.
Yeah.
But it gets hot when everybody in my, like you got a ton of people sitting in a room. So I had the window open
Yeah.
to the studio room and I forgot I had left it open. And we had just been ripping growls, high screams for like hours, for probably 2 or 3 hours, off and on. And one of the neighbors thought somebody was dying in the
Yeah.
house, basically.
That's why my studio is in the basement and has been for its entire existence.
That's why I have a commercial studio now,
Yeah.
in a industrial park,
Right. Yeah.
outside of a house now.
You can torture your victims out there, and nobody will know.
Where nobody will ever know.
Yeah, that's. I've never gotten. I get comments all the time on, wow, I wonder how many times he's gotten the cops called, or I wonder how his neighbors feel, and my answer is always, well, now it's because it's in a basement and you really can't hear it, but all of us have had periods where we're living in a dorm where you have actually got cops called on you for making an album. Um, have there been any situations in your life where you've needed to sing, you've needed to practice, you've needed to record, other than everything is fine, where you had to be conscious of neighbors? And how did you thrive and improve as a vocalist in light of living in a dorm, or in light of living in close court apartment complexes, or sharing your roommates and stuff like that? What does that look like for you?
When I've had roommates and had studio setups at home, I was just always very cognizant of, like their work hours.
Yeah,
I would never do anything super late. If I was doing anything late, it would be either editing vocals or writing the music aspect of things. So you can just do that on headphones, right? Like
yeah,
it's not a big deal. And then, during the day or on weekends, strategically planning the vocal recordings and working things out around then.
right. Yeah, yeah, and that's roommates. Have you ever had a situation where you don't have necessarily roommates, but you have other, like for me, it was a dorm room. And what I had to do is I just went around on my floor, and I said, I'm a vocalist. I'm learning, and you're going to hear some stupid things. I invite you to come by and watch and or listen. And I would have people congregate outside my door as I was ripping a line over and over again trying to get it. And it did some interesting things for my mental aspect. Like, I am no longer afraid, and you can see this on my stuff on YouTube, and why I'm able to try Periphery stuff on a video and sell it, right? Me like failing utterly over and over again. I don't care. And that, I think that has gone a long way for me improving as a vocalist, because I got my start in a dorm room having people watch me learn how to do it. And I made friends, and I got laughs, and I was laughing. I was able to not take myself too seriously.
And that's what it's about, man. Not taking yourself too seriously, and just having fun with it, and doing it for yourself, right? And not
Yeah.
worrying about what other people think.
Yeah. Yeah. You if you can't get over that, you can't make these goofy gateway weird sounds that don't sound good in order to get to a point where you do sound good. That's yeah, and just like we were saying before, it has to sensation has to come before sound, or you the way you said it, the feel has to come before the thinking. I'm
Yeah,
feeling and not thinking.
100%.
What's Chris's and Spencer's favorite Periphery song, and why?
I think for me right now, Dracul Gras is my favorite song. And that was just a lot of fun to make, with the guitar players, like sitting there. I don't have any riffs in that song by any means, but we were just all vibing off each other so well, that day. And there's a riff that Misha wrote in that song that's my favorite Periphery riff of all time. And I don't know what you would call it. It's the one that's in kind of like the weird time signature. When I was describing to Misha what to write, I'm like, oh, think of like Radiohead meets this meets Meshuggah and this. He's like, oh, okay, I got you. And we just sat in a room for like, I think it took him like 2 hours to really like hone that riff in and figure it out. We were just like, oh, but this chord change and that chord change, and I don't know, that was just a really cool stamp in time for me on this record. And I love the way that the song flows. It's got this really dark, ominous vibe to it that I like. I tend to like a lot more of the dark vibe stuff that we do,
Mm-hmm.
especially recently. I don't know, maybe just because of the vibe of the last few years for me, but that song really came together in a way that I'm very, very proud of. I would say I'm the most proud of that song over all other Periphery songs we've done.
Wow, that's cool. Uh, Second place?
Second place. Uh, I think I really, really like Atropos. Atropos is,
That's a great
and
song.
and what's funny is that when we were writing the record, that wasn't even close to one of my favorites. But after it coming together the way it did in the end, because I mean the structures change, right? Structures change. There have been different vocals on that song, and the way it came together now, I always find myself going back to that one. Like if I'm like listening to that record, like every time it comes on, I'm like, yeah, this is the jam right here.
Yeah. Um, Real quick, and then I want to share my top two. Spencer, have you changed your style and technique of singing and screaming over the years? Because when I heard the re-recorded Jetpacks, you sounded very happy and smiley compared to the original one. And I mean, oh man, yes, he's changed over the years. And I would say uh, an extra emphasis on that in the last 4 years since P4 and P5. And I think that's the reason we made this new course is that it's not like you were doing anything wrong before, but there was so much more value that you could bring after your experiences over the last 4 years in how you created this last record. There was so much more. Um, your approach, I think your approach changed massively between the P1 P2 days and then like P3 P4. Like there that was like totally a different thing. But the most recent instantiation of your technique is so much more sustainable, freeing, natural, incredible.
Yeah, I mean, dude, the way I'm approaching singing now, like this tour that we just did was the first tour I didn't really get vocal fatigue.
Which is
There
just crazy.
by the last day of tour, I still felt as good as like a weekend tour.
That's the way
That's
you
it.
want
This
it.
that and I could say that honestly, dude, no bullshitting. That this is the first tour that's ever happened on.
That
I've
is so
I've
awesome.
always hit those points in tours in the past where it's like, oh man, okay, here we go. This is how it's going to be for the rest of tour because I'm not going to have enough time to have vocal rest to get my voice to go back to where I want it, and the rest of the tour just ends up being that way.
Right.
But on this tour, it was just steady, smooth sailing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so cool. All right, my turn for my favorite my two favorite Periphery songs. Uh Currently, and I've talked about it already on this, and probably because I'm trying to sing it. But Wax Wings is my current favorite Periphery song. Uh, I think that a close second has got to be it's Only Smiles. Um, yeah, it's tough because I on P4 there's like 5 tracks that would be second, but I think that I think I like It's Only Smiles for the reasons that we were talking about earlier. That it is one of those that it means something to you as the person who wrote it and went through that struggle. Um, but I think it means something to me for a completely different reason. Um, and like um, I had it was a couple of years before you and I met, but my wife had 2 back-to-back miscarriages, and they were really, really painful. Really painful. I mean, for her, I can't even imagine. But for me as well, and just the I didn't feel the physical pain of it, but I felt the direction pain, and like, oh, I thought we were supposed to have these kids, and we didn't, and it wasn't supposed to happen this way, and even and the journey that you go through in that song has been a very comforting thing in light of that. So thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And that's another thing I want to stress too is a song can mean something to one person and another person gets something totally different out of it, or thinks it's about this or that. And what I was, if people, I've seen people arguing over stuff like that online. It's
Yeah.
like, who cares? Let that piece of art mean what that person wants it to mean to them, because
Right.
they're taking something away from it that they feel good about, right?
Yeah.
Let that, who are we to say no, like you can't feel that way about it, that's not what it means. And for the longest time, I wouldn't tell people what my lyrics were about,
Yeah.
because I didn't like breaking the facade of what they thought it was,
Yeah.
and because I've had that happen to me in the past, where like I think a song's about one thing, I'm like, oh, that's so cool, and then when I find out it's about something else, and sometimes just like the most like shallow whatever, and there wasn't this deep metaphoric meaning behind it, it like ruined the vibe of the song for me.
Right.
So if people really want to know, I tell them, I'll have conversations about it, but I like letting people make their own assumptions about what my lyrics mean and what it means to them.
Yeah. Yeah. I think my guy who never knew he mentored me, Chris Cornell, said something very similar, right? Like he liked putting himself in situations that were not him, where he's writing about someone else, but writing about it in first person, but he's actually writing about a character. And this character is not him, but maybe has attributes of him. And that makes it relatable to him, but also it's saying what you just said, right? Like this is going to be meaningful to people on a universal level because they can reach in for their own interpretation, attach their own baggage, their own experiences to it, and make it powerful. And I think that. In fact, it was kind of funny. Right after we posted the wildfire thing, one of the first comments from someone was, "Chris, do you know what these lyrics are about?" And it was almost a you got a sense, and maybe he wasn't like this, but it was almost like he was worried for me or something. And and I said, well, actually no, I don't. I don't fully, but as I've connected with this song, we're talking about wildfire. I shared what the song meant to me, and wrote that in as a reply to the comment. And I got back this very positive, like affirming, like, oh, thank you for sharing. This is really cool. And I just thought that was a neat exchange because it shows exactly what you're talking about, right? It's easy, especially I think in I'm gonna say this genre, but that's not really true. I unless you're talking about like a country music song, right, where it's like super sanitized and stuff like. But when you're writing about topics and using the kind of intensity that comes out in these songs, like it's easy for people to, if they're not prepared for it, get offended by it.
Yeah.
But if you are prepared, if you're emotionally prepared to confront your own emotions, I think that's where this music, particularly this album, I think that's where this music actually meets you. If you're willing to be honest and vulnerable with yourself, then this music will help you do that, and it will actually relate to you on a level that you're going to be unprepared for. If you are not in that place, then it's going to be more difficult. It's not like not in that place, and maybe it's you just don't like the style of music. That's a whole other thing. But if you're not in the place where you're ready to be vulnerable and honest with yourself, you won't have quite the connection that you could, because when you were writing this, when you guys were creating it, were in that vulnerable state. Just to bring the
Yeah.
conversation, another whole other direction, or back to the same
Totally.
thing we were talking about before. It's incredible to think about how our own state is what attaches meaning to what someone else has created.
Yeah, and the lyrics on this record are more personal than I've ever, like, by far, than I've ever, dug into lyrically. So it's I mean, some of them could be taken up for interpretation, but I feel like a lot of them are very in your face and direct
Yeah.
this time around. Yeah.
Totally. Well, man, thank you so much for, even though you're tired and working long days with dance.
It's all good. Last night was the last night of this session. They're probably going to come back at some point to write more, but we did 10 songs in 8 days. Yeah, it was
Oh man.
grueling. But yeah, I get a couple days break now, which is nice before I have to do anything else.
Well, I hope that you guys all are able to check out the latest course bundles. Thank you for hanging with us this whole time. I love these just hangs and chats, and it's almost like we just got on Zoom and talked.
Yeah,
You
dude,
know,
it's always good to catch up with you, man.
yeah. So go check out the course bundles if you get a chance, and thank you for being here, and we'll see you all for more.
See you guys.